So as I set out to write this sermon about being wrong, I had two simultaneous feelings. First, I felt really passionate and excited. Like this idea of rightness and wrongness was a really important topic to delve into. And second, I felt totally lost, unable to decide what I actually wanted to say on the topic. And eventually I realized, and by eventually I mean yesterday, I realized that I was trying to do something that actually made no sense. I was trying to be that A student overachiever that Catherine Schultz talked about. I was trying to come up with the one message that was definitively, absolutely the right thing to say about the possibility of being wrong. You see the problem here? I was worried that I was going to tell you the wrong thing about being wrong, and then I would be wrong. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try not to do that. I'm not going to give you just one way to think about the possibility of being wrong, because it's actually a lot more complicated than that. We can't just say universally that we either think that we are right too often or that we worry too much that we are wrong. Both are true. Neither are true, right? It's complicated. So instead, I want to share with you just a few of the ways I wondered this week about being wrong as I contemplated this idea of the possibility of being wrong. And I want to invite you into wondering with me about how you see these showing up in your life and in our world. So first, there was the most obvious and basic way of being wrong, those mistakes that we make that help us learn. Now, as a new parent, I have countless examples of this kind of being wrong from the last 9 months of my life. And the one I look back on and laugh at the most at this point is where I thought my newborn baby would be willing to sleep. So there's all this literature out there, and I read it all, about having your baby in the room with you for the first 6 months of their life. But Tristan and I like our space, and we thought that's not really necessary. Her crib will be about 10 feet from our bed, even if she's in her own room. It'll be totally fine, right? So that first night we were home from the hospital, it got to be around bedtime, right? And she was sleeping, as newborns do like almost all the time. And so we set her down in her crib, right? And she woke up instantaneously, screaming. This happened repeatedly over the next couple of hours. Now, I don't actually remember how we got through that first night. I think I've blocked it from my mind. But it definitely did not include Olympia sleeping in her crib in her room at all. Now, every day we make these kind of low-stakes trial and error mistakes, testing out our knowledge, assumptions, and skills to see where we are right and where we are wrong. Sometimes we start off really confidently and we end up sheepish, like in my example. Sometimes we start off unsure and we end up actually kind of impressed with ourselves. This is the learn as you go kind of being wrong. This is the lowest stakes of the possibility of being wrong, but still important. We need to be willing to try and fail in order to grow as people and to innovate. Now, a second way of being wrong that I wondered about this week is the way in which how we see our world is shaped by the culture in which we were raised, by our social location, by the power and privilege we hold. One of my very favorite TED Talks is by author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, called The Danger of a Single Story. Adichie grew up in Nigeria, and when she came to the United States for college, she shocked her American roommate. She describes it like this: She, the American roommate, asked where I had learned to speak English so well, and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music, and she consequently was very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this: she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way. No possibility of feelings more complex than pity. No possibility of connection as equals. We are all guilty of this, right? We have a particular way of seeing the world, of thinking about ourselves and others, and those stories are never 100% right. We're always learning where our blind spots are, what it is that we don't understand because we haven't experienced it. Several years ago, I did one of those privilege walks for the first time. If you've never done one before, basically you all start standing on a line and the leader says various statements and invites you to take a step forward or a step back based on whether you identify with any given statement. Now, I thought I was pretty enlightened at the time, and that I knew approximately what kind of statements they would make. I was pretty sure I wasn't going to learn from this. It would just be an experience. But then, of course, came the one that shocked me. Step forward if you grew up with more than 50 books in your house. Now, I am the child of 2 educators, and so I thought, well, that's a silly one. Who has fewer than 50 books? I literally could not picture what it would be like to be in a home that had fewer than 50 books. But of course, not everyone stepped forward, right? Recognizing our blind spots, hearing and believing other people's stories about what the world looks like to them is vital to understanding our world better and to our work for justice in the world. This is especially true when it comes to listening to the voices and stories of those who are most impacted by our actions, and listening to the voices of those who have been historically marginalized and oppressed. As a white, straight, cisgender person, I don't actually get to say what it is that people of color and people in the LGBTQ community need. My job is to listen and amplify those voices, to do my best to hear from people in those communities about what it looks like for me to be an ally. Imagine how our Wonderbox story might have been different if the monkey had asked the fish what they needed and been willing to listen. My colleague, the Reverend Kristen Grassel-Schmidt, describes it like this: I am not trans, but this trans woman is telling me that she doesn't feel safe going into public bathrooms. I may not understand her experience, but her life and safety matter more than my ignorance. I am not black, but this black man is telling me that he fears for his children's lives when they are pulled over for running a red light, when they have to travel alone at night. What this person is saying might threaten everything that I think I know about this country, but Black lives matter more than what I want to believe is true about America. We may never know all of the beliefs of ours that are holding back the tide of justice, says Schmidt. But we can be sure that the need to be right about the attitudes and assumptions these and other issues bring up in our minds and hearts is a barrier to the search for truth. It is a barrier to justice. Now, so far, you might notice that everything I've said about being wrong fits in really well with our Unitarian Universalist understanding of multiple truths, of the many ways of understanding our world. And so far, it all points to the need for us to work on feeling okay about the possibility of being wrong. Now, I could end this sermon right here with a call for humility and for letting go of the idea that we are right about everything. And that would be a decent message, right? I don't think it's wrong, but I do think it's a bit more complex than that. You see, there are times when I think we get too caught up in the fear that we might be wrong, and we end up not doing or saying anything at all. I know this is true for me. Again, part of this is about social location. I know that as a woman, I have been taught by our culture to apologize for having opinions, to speak in ways that minimize my certainty. I see this manifesting even as I write this sermon. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a lunch of various faith and justice folks from around New Hampshire, and we were having a conversation about organizing and power and risk. I was having a lot of thoughts, but I didn't share them because they weren't fully formed, and I wasn't sure they'd be interesting or useful to the others. On the car ride home, I shared some of what I had been thinking with Tristan, who had also been at the lunch. And he asked, "Why didn't you say that?" Now, I had a pretty feeble response to that about how other people were talking, and it was too hard to jump in, and I wasn't sure anyone would care. To which Tristan pointed out that it was mostly the men in the room who were talking, and they certainly weren't worrying about whether their thoughts were perfect or fully formed. And he was absolutely right. Upon reflection, I realized that I was doing the thing that I often do, the thing that got me low participation grades in college. I was too caught up worrying that what I had to say was perfectly right, and so I ended up saying nothing at all. Even in the most progressive circles, I see these dynamics happening, not just with men and women, but generally with those who have more power and those who have less. The hesitation to speak or act until we get it exactly right can get in the way of our work for justice, especially when it manifests as moral relativism, which is sometimes masked as a call for civility in public discourse. There is value, absolutely, in listening to all sides of an issue, in trying to understand, but there is not value in letting that stop us from taking a side on anything. I've heard some Unitarian Universalists objecting to the name of our National Social Justice Campaign, which is now called Side with Love, saying that love doesn't take sides. I actually think this is a really dangerous idea, with the potential of allowing all kinds of harm simply because we don't want to alienate anyone. I believe that love does take sides, that Unitarian Universalism takes sides. We side with love when we side with our immigrant neighbors who are here simply seeking a better life and call for them to be treated with dignity. We side with love when we say that Black Lives Matter, that people should not be denied their humanity because of the color of their skin. We side with love when we show up this afternoon at City Hall at 3 o'clock for our trans siblings, declaring that it is not right to ask anyone to hide who they are in order to serve our country. Yes, 50 years from now, there will probably be something, probably many things about our justice work that is deemed wrong, right? We'll have learned something in 50 years. And I believe that the world will nonetheless be better for that work. We critique things about the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement, especially about their lack of intersectionality, but we are still grateful for the progress they made. They were not right about everything, but we're still glad they didn't sit by and not act. So, what does it look like for us to live with the possibility that we might be wrong? I wonder if what we need is to embody some kind of combination of humility and conviction. I wonder if there is some middle ground here where we understand the possibility of being wrong and yet do not let it paralyze us. I'm not sure we've figured out what that middle ground looks like yet. But I wonder if we could find it. May we remember that we could be wrong. But, as Catherine Schultz said, getting something wrong does not have to mean that there is something wrong with us. May it be so.
Well, I'm gonna get through this world the best I can if I can. And I'm gonna get through this world, and I think I can. I'm gonna work in this world the best I can if I can. And I'm gonna work in this world, and I think I can. Work in this world best I can if I can. I'm gonna work in this world best I can if I can. I'm gonna get through this world best I can. Well, I'm gonna walk in this world the best I can if I can. And I'm gonna walk in this world, and I think I can. I'm gonna talk in this world the best I can if I can. And I'm gonna talk in this world, and I think I can. I think I can. I'm gonna walk in this world best I can if I can. I'm gonna talk in this world best I can if I can. I'm gonna get through this world best I I'm gonna clean up this world the best I can if I can. And I'm gonna clean up this world, and I think I can. Well, I'm gonna leave this world behind the best I can if I can.